good evening, good morning, good afternoon. This is Peter VK3YE, and the light won't be particularly good. It will get a bit better. We're still about 8 o'clock, about 8:20 in the morning here, and it's fairly dim outside here in Melbourne, where it's the middle of the winter. And I think yesterday we had pretty much the coldest day of the year. But that didn't stop a few of us, in fact more than a few of us, about 15 or 20, going out to enjoy Melbourne QRP by the day. Anyway, we've got 6 viewers, so the viewer numbers are building up. And if you've just turned on, it's Ask Me Anything, and I'm Peter VK3YE, and I'll talk about a few of my doings as well. You can see right next to me, right here on the bench, is a QRP transceiver, something I first built probably about 30 years ago. I took out its bits and put something else in it. But yeah, this I last fired up a couple of days ago. There is the Fists CW Club. I don't know if you know about Fists, but they here in Australia they have contests and things, and they have a little 80-meter contest. And this thing is crystal controlled, or more accurately, it's VXO controlled. There's a bit of excessive light there. It only covers a 3 kilohertz range on 80 meters, so it's a bit limiting, particularly in contests. But anyway, I usually fire this thing up during the fist sessions. Weren't all that good. The previous month, I think I had like 6 or 8 contacts. But yeah, being crystal controlled was definitely a bit of a constraint. You could hear, that there are people further up the band, but you couldn't come back to them. So you were hoping that they would find you. And in a couple of cases they did. There were some that came back to me, but I had too much noise here, so unfortunately I couldn't work them. But yeah, this thing, it has independent controls. This varies the receiver, and this varies the transmitter control. So the great thing about it is that you can have frequency offset on CW. Yeah, we've got our first comment. So hi to Tim46767 in Central Europe. What time would it be there? It'd be in the small hours of the morning, I would think. Here it's 8:25 a.m. here in Melbourne. Yeah, I've just only 1.5 contacts, but in a little 80-meter CW contest. But yeah, this is just a little direct conversion receiver. 16 people on, which is great. If you've just turned on, it's Ask Me Anything, and I'm Peter VK3YE. And our first question from Stephen Carr: what got me into QRP? Well, pretty much, I don't know, I've always been messing with electronics and bits and pieces, and my first transmitter was QRP, 1-valve crystal controlled thing. In fact, I'll see if I can bring up its circuit on, I was just looking at it the other day. It used a triode and pentode, because I tried transistor circuits and I didn't get them to work, but I tried this one from the 1973 ARRL handbook, and it did work. It's just, and that was QRP. Basically, more power would just require me to put in more effort in building stuff. So just check the, okay, page 35. I'm just having a look at a magazine you can't see at the moment. Where are we? This was published in Amateur Radio magazine in March 1988, and if you're on the web, you can look up www.armag.vk6uu.id.au. You could probably do a Google search on Amateur Radio magazine and you'll find it, but there are archives of that magazine going from 1933 through to only a few years ago. So there's a great lot of resources there for those who haven't seen Amateur Radio magazine. But yeah, I'm just searching for this transmitter circuit. No, it's not that one. We'll try. It's interesting. There's another one there. Okay, page 37. 39. Okay, here it is. Now I don't actually have a view. Actually, I'll just double check that. Yeah, it's not a very good view. You might not be able to see the circuit diagram, but yeah, it's two valves, but it's actually using a triode pentode with a crystal controlled. So yeah, that was my first transmitter, and that is what got me into QRP. It's crystal controlled on 80 meters, and I would often work, because of the frequency of the crystal I had, I would often work cross mode to people on SSB when I was on CW. Okay, a few more comments. Hi to Andy Cowley, 2E0REE, and 65 Bellet from fellow Victorian. Good day to you. 9A3LET. What's the simplest L-band antenna to make? L-band antenna, that's up on in gigahertz range. Haven't done anything there, so can't really comment. I don't know, maybe a dish, maybe you'd etch something out of printed circuit boards. They do that for microwave antennas. Is L-band too small for that? I'm not sure. You wouldn't have much gain, but yeah, if other people have got comments on making L-band antennas, please chime in on the comments. Kelly Harmsworth, various vertical antenna designs. What's the effect of coiling a wire around a shorter vertical pole? Yeah, I do that with mobile antennas, continuously mobile antennas. Like I've heard of people getting fishing rod blanks, and they make it continuously loaded. I think from memory, you have to wrap something like half a wavelength of wire around it. It'd help if you had an antenna analyzer to work out how much. But yeah, that can work. Because wire straight up the side of a longer pole, that's okay if you are not much, if the antenna is not much shorter than a quarter wavelength. Like with my Rage tenor that I've used pedestrian mobile, that's 5 meters long. And and that works very well from 10 megahertz up to 28 megahertz. And on 10 megahertz, 5 meters at 30 meters is 1/6 of a wavelength. But then when I try and get it to operate on 7 megahertz, it's where it's only 1/8 of a wavelength, it's not so good. So then that's when I put in a loading coil in the middle of the antenna, it's center loaded, and that works great with the antenna coupler at the bottom. So when you go to something like only 1/8 of a wavelength tall, it is difficult to match it at the bottom with an antenna coupler. So you could have a loading coil, or, as you suggested, continuous loading. Some mobile antenna designs have continuous loading down it, and if you want multi-band, you can have taps where you've got, say, a banana connection and a wander lead, and you can tap off however many turns you need for the frequency you want to operate. Yeah, Gaz, yes. Yeah, sorry that missed you. Yeah, conditions were pretty poor. I think there were stations trying to call me that I couldn't hear, or had difficulties hearing them. I think I don't know if you're operating VK2 FDU, but I did hear that. But I was crystal controlled with the transceiver you see here. So whereas some people stuck to one frequency and called, so you wouldn't have got me. But yeah, I could move around a little bit, like 3 kilohertz. But it's funny, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Like the June contest was really good, and being crystal controlled wasn't much of handicap, but yeah, I don't think conditions were so good the other night. So yeah, only had 1.5 contacts. Kelly, yeah, targeting 20 meters. So yeah, it depends on the length of the wire, but, or the length of the rod. But yeah, if you had a 2 meter long rod, insulated, good dielectric properties, you could wind wire continuously loaded, and that would make perfectly good mobile antenna. I think antennas like the ham sticks might do that. So it will be less bandwidth than if you're using a full-sized antenna. In that regard, low bandwidth means high Q, which means you're probably going to get less loss than an antenna that's a wider bandwidth. It's also very small. So yeah, go for it. It would work fine. Continuously loaded wire, enameled wire out of a transformer or something like that should be okay. It's just a lot of cutting and trying to get the exact length. But as it's a sharp antenna, you might be able to use a receiver and you just tune it across with a general coverage receiver. Say from 10 to 15 megahertz or even a wider range. And as the antenna is a high Q, you will get a peak in the received noise when you are around its resonant frequency. So yeah, but you might still have a lower impedance than 50 ohm. So you might want some sort of matching transformer or auto transformer or something at the base of the antenna if you're using it for, say, a mobile setup. But yeah, should be a lot of stuff on the web. There's an American guy, is it K0BG, who's got a lot of stuff on the web about mobile antenna designs, which could be helpful. Save your PA 3 dB power pad between the rig and the ATU when tuning up a strange load. Yep, that's a good idea if you've got a transceiver that's you think could blow up if you're subjecting it to other than 50 ohm. Or you could just drop your if you've got a 100-watt transceiver, do your tuning at 10 watts or something, which might help. The other thing you could do is to use a antenna coupler, or what do I call it? Resistive antenna bridge. Yeah, that's right. That if you use that and a few watts, then you're not subjecting the transceiver to a wide variation in impedance as you adjust the coupler. Good day to John K. Glad that we're being watched in Nairobi, Kenya. And also Stephen, GOSTE, glad to have you with us. 9A3LET, what circuit do you recommend as your first project? I'd say something pretty simple, like, even a field strength meter. It's only got about 3 or 4 components. If you've got an old analog meter movement, that's pretty simple. 1 transistor projects, like 1 transistor crystal oscillator. In fact, I've got a video describing just a simple 1 transistor crystal oscillator. Provided you've got a receiver, you can buy crystals cheap on eBay. Crystals like 3.58 megahertz, that's in an amateur band, so you can test with that. But yeah, you can try simple regenerative receivers. If you've got AM radio in your area, maybe a crystal set. All a lot of simple projects. Quite a bit on my website, VK3YE.com, should help. 23 viewers, which is great. If you've just turned on, it's Ask Me Anything, and I'm Peter, VK3YE, where it's 8:36 a.m. on a Sunday morning here in Melbourne. Should also mention that we had a great Melbourne QRP by the Bay yesterday. I didn't take any video, but it was absolutely miserable weather. We were thinking of cancelling it. There was hail. Some areas had sleet. It was like, okay, you're probably laughing because you get temperatures lower than this in other countries, but it was like 11 or 12 degrees. And it was raining and rain was sideways. Anyway, we got something like 15 or 20 people there, so even though it was miserable cold. So that was pretty good out by the beach. And you had a few sunny patches. It was too windy to put up an antenna and get on air, but yeah, it was a great social occasion. And we went to the pub later on and restaurant late after that. So that was great. So thanks to those who went to Melbourne QRP by the Bay. Most QRP amplifiers use Class E with BS170 or IO510, not you. Why? Laziness, just haven't got around to it. N to NDF, magnetic loop antennas for 7 megahertz. Any specs on that? Yeah, there's some stuff on my website, VK3YE.com, on portable antennas, and that links to some couple of magnetic loops I've tried, and there's some videos on that. Tennessee rural idea: unknown ferrite toroids for antenna auto transformers. Yeah, it can be a bit of a yeah, you find these unmarked ferrites and things in computer power supplies and whatever. I think you can. There are ways to test them. I don't know, if you were to make 2 one-to-one transformers and put them together and try and measure the loss with a transmitter and dummy load and power meter, maybe you could work out something there and try various frequencies. Yeah, haven't tried that at all. With NFET half waves, I normally use an L match and iron powder toroids, not ferrite. The benefit of that is you can vary the capacitance and the inductance, and yeah, you can get it to operate not just on one frequency but on multiple frequencies. And I like the idea of tuning things, getting resonance and all that, rather than sort of a broadband ferrite. Yeah, John K. Yeah, no, my 817 hasn't given me any trouble. Southside Hopper: ocean's the best groundwater dam of water in a country property, improved reception. Well, it's probably not salt water, so salt water would be better. I'll just bring up a see if I can bring up a photo somewhere where I am. I try some pedestrian mobile where I am standing. It's not quite a dam, but it's a fly fishing pond. Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure if you can see it because I can't see actually what I'm pointing at. But anyway, that's me standing in a shallow fly fishing pond trying to